Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really excited to have you on.
It's great, John. I mean, being at Jesuit High School during formation has been one of the greatest blessings of my formation. I've been a Jesuit now for 9 years.
Wow.
Almost completing 9 years as a Jesuit, and the last 3 years being here in Tampa, getting to know people such as yourself, and being at the high school, the students have definitely been the best part of my formation for sure.
Really? You said the last 3 years were kind of the
Well, I mean, if I just, reflect back and seeing where I was at the end of first studies, so that's, after vows and the Jesuits, we go and do our philosophy studies.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I look after those 4 years of getting my undergrad in philosophy, coming here to Jesuit Tampa to where I am now, just huge spike up in just my prayer life, my devotional life, my understanding of the faith. Everything has really just taken off in the last 3 years, thanks to being here for sure.
Wow, that's awesome. Is that so? What you at Jesuit? You are a teacher and also in campus ministry, correct? You kind of do. Mm-hmm. You're on both sides of it. You kind of see both ends of the spiritual, educational realm.
That's right. And also, Father Hermes is the president at Jesuit High School. And one thing he said to myself and another scholastic, Connor Smith, he encouraged us to get involved in all aspects of school life. It's not the case anymore that we have, 30, 40 priests and scholastics at the school.
Yeah.
That's just not our reality. We all know that. And so we try to maximize, right now we have 6 Jesuits on campus. When we got here, it was really 4, and then Father Vanderholt. So he encourages, listen, we got to maximize who we are. We got to be in every little pocket of campus to try to, bring the Jesuit, Jesuits to all parts of the campus. And so I also coached basketball all 3 years. I played basketball in high school.
Which is crazy because you're only 5'3".
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
How'd you know?
So it's wild that you are. And there's no way to fact check it because we're on camera and no one can ever know.
Yeah. And then I also played lacrosse. So then I was also coached lacrosse this past year too.
So you got really involved with just.
So it's the sports. I teach Algebra 1, so to the freshmen, so math.
Is that miserable?
No.
No,
it's not miserable. It's hilarious because they're freshmen, and some of the things they say, I don't know where it comes from. Do I have a headache most days? Yes. Mm-hmm. But does that mean it's miserable? No.
Okay.
Trying to teach factoring to a freshman when they probably should know their times tables a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
That checks out. Yeah, my freshman algebra class, I didn't really give my teacher the easiest time.
Who'd you have?
I had Miss Colazzo.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a great teacher.
She was great. Yeah. She's a gem of a teacher, gem of a human.
True.
Yeah.
It's hard because, that's one thing. Discipline at a high school and at a private high school, it's a tricky thing because, you want to reprimand the action that was done, right? But then the goal of that is to hopefully redirect them.
Yeah.
So if you're just, getting them a slap on the wrist, does that actually correct what was done?
Yeah, making it not just punitive, but actually
restorative.
Yeah,
restorative justice, right? You want to restore what was happening, what the action that took place. And so, that's where I think discipline in the classroom is always better than going to a PH. Like for me, this year, my first year, I didn't really understand that as a teacher. First year as a teacher is a lot because you're trying to learn how to teach the material, number one. Number two, you're trying to figure out, okay, what is my classroom dynamic like? Everybody knows that every teacher has their own classroom dynamic.
Yeah.
And as a first year, I had no idea what my classroom dynamic was like. And then you get the troublesome kids who are just, either ADHD or just troublesome because they're troublesome, and so you're trying to control the classroom. And so my first year, I would resort to the PH kind of quickly. And I thought that would take care of things, but it never did.
Yeah.
So I think, discipline at a high school is hard, and it's always best if it's taken care of in the classroom. And that's where you get, I think the good teachers are able to deal with it in the classroom. Now, of course, not everything can be dealt with in the classroom.
Sometimes they just got to go to detention.
Sometimes they say something extremely stupid, and you're like, why in the world would you say that? Even if you thought it, why would you say that? And you need to go see,
I had a few moments like that in Latin class that was just like, it was like, dude, why did you think that was a good...
Exactly.
Like, why?
Just
like,
not thinking.
We had a teacher be like, take your hoodies off for the test. And the kid was like, should I take my pants off too? And I was like, why did you think that needed to be said?
It doesn't.
Like, what else do we do about this?
Yeah.
Like, you just have to go to detention now.
Well, and that's a classic, that's an all-boys school being an all-boys school.
Yeah, I do have to say there was one dude I heard of who's a year above me, and he, all during class, was like pretending he had an invisible dog with him. Like, the whole class was like, he walked the dog into class, dog was there, he kept talking to the dog during the lesson. And eventually the teacher was like, you have to go up to the office. Like, I can't do this. And the kid walks out of the room, and a few seconds later walks back, opens the door, calls the dog to him, and then goes back down. And I was like, I don't respect it if I was the teacher, but as a student, that sounds hilarious.
Well, and that's also one thing that's been great the last 3 years being a teacher. I went to an all-boy Jesuit high school.
Yeah, you kind of know.
As well, so in Denver, Colorado. And I know all of those dynamics.
Yeah, you're familiar.
I am very familiar with the boys just trying to either get a laugh, blow off some steam, whatever it is, poking fun at each other. Like, one thing that I've tried, or at least have provided some perspective on for some other faculty who haven't gone or didn't go to a all-boy Jesuit high school. It's like trying to explain the difference between when the boys are just, roughing each other's feathers or just, poking at each other fun, and when it starts to become bullying.
Yeah.
I think that's a perspective that I have been able to bring because I also was that guy who would just poke fun at his friends all the time. Sad to say, too, sometimes I did cross that line into bullying. Not proud of that. And sometimes I myself didn't know the difference if I was bullying or if I was just poking fun, because it also is on the receiver, right?
Totally.
On how the student. So as a teacher, I kind of get to see it all.
Yeah.
Like, I get to see the dynamic of the classroom, and that is part of the teacher's role, right? Is to making sure that the classroom dynamic is conducive to learning. And you need that. Or else nothing's going to get done.
Yeah, and you're also in such close proximity to that time of your life that, like, how the dynamics work because you experienced very similar ones, 8 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, which would have been August 2021, I graduated May 2015.
Wow, okay.
So, yeah, 6
years difference.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, you have a lot of applicable experience, which I'll also bet has a lot of benefit for the guys to see someone as a teacher who understands it, but also as someone studying to become like a priest.
Right.
Even less so of like, oh, I want to be a priest too. More of just like, oh, this guy takes his faith life seriously, but also like he can hang. Like he's not just a goober.
Right. He's not just a goober. Yeah, no, it's true. I think, for many different reasons, but, just wearing the collar, being, in clerics every day. I think it's good for our students to see. And to see a guy who's young, like that's the grace of being a regent right now, right? That's the stage of formation that I'm in. Being a regent right now and not being a priest, the kids are able to see, I think, themselves in me a little bit more.
Totally.
As well, because I've coached basketball, because I coached lacrosse. I started a fantasy football league for the faculty.
Nice.
So, word gets around that, I'm a big Denver sports fan. So recently I had countless students come up and say, how about them Nuggets? The Nuggets just lost.
Tough break.
Yeah, I know. And they're the defending champs. It was heartbreaking.
We have a guy here who's a big Nuggets fan. He was giving us updates every day. And I went out to watch the game, and I FaceTimed him at halftime. I was like, dude, it's looking good. Dude,
historic comeback.
And then
Ridiculous.
I called him after, and I was like, hey, man, it's not personal. It's just not personal.
But that's a great entryway.
Totally.
Just so the fact that the students know they can come up to me and talk about sports, and I'll actually know at least a little bit of what I'm talking about. And recently in class when we were reviewing, we had a student was asking, who would win, Batman versus Superman? Who would Marvel, questions too. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've watched all the Marvel movies, I've even read some of the comics. And so it's I'm not, fully well versed on it, but I feel like I'm more well versed than a freshman in high school on this question. Yeah. And then being able also to bring it all the way always back to the faith too. That's what I've loved about coaching is just there's something to be said about the NIL deals and stuff right now. And, Coach Saban, his exit interview was very interesting. But sports have a lot to teach kids about versatility, being able to, resilience, growing in virtue, being part of a team. There's a lot of actually Catholic virtues that are instilled and can be instilled via sports.
Totally.
That's the goal. Jesuit high school, we're very good at sports.
It's no small thing.
And, and I do see it. I would love to see it more, of course, but I do see how sports are forming our young men. Mm-hmm. But, I'm fearful a little bit of the future, just because, how much preference is given to sports. It's as if now they're walking on water. It's no longer formational. It's, I'm very athletic, so I can get things from it.
Yeah.
It's not playing the sport for the sake of the sport and for my own formation.
And you lose the virtue of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when you say the tie-in with Catholic virtue as well, because it's part of the reason that it ties in so well is because you're pursuing something that is intangible. Mm-hmm. You're pursuing something that is a higher level of pursuit. Mm-hmm. But I'll also bet that in you instilling this idea of seeing the faith in these things, it's probably helped you see the faith in a lot of things as well. Just similarly from being in that perspective, having so recently flipped your perspective from 2015 being the student to now 6 years later being the coach.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. And coaching too is a whole nother thing. I used to think, when I was playing, middle school basketball and then, into high school playing lacrosse and all that. It's what did the coach do during the game? I'm the player. I somewhat had that mentality of you're not on the field. So you're not, I'm the one making the plays.
Yeah.
I never told my coach that.
Yeah.
And I was very coachable. I always listened to the coach, I'm not that hot-headed. And I also wasn't that athletic to do that.
To have the right
that's
to be
uncoachable. But being the coach, has provided a whole new perspective to the game. And you see so much more as the coach than you do as a player. And trying to build up a team is huge. And having a good team dynamic is huge. Goes a long way. Just like having a good dynamic in the classroom goes a long way. On a retreat, having the right peer ministers goes a long way. So much of it, the environment and how it's constructed.
Yeah. And even as you say it with like the classroom of like, it's a similar thought where like as a student, I'm like, dang, I'm the one doing the work in here. You're just grading it.
Yeah.
Like I'm the one that's actually answering it. But it takes like, it takes someone who's interested in the holistic experience of a classroom to actually recognize the perspective of a student and how to leverage it into like a benefit, how to leverage it into like a formative experience.
Right. Exactly. You need someone who has the picture of the whole to be able to guide you through that experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I mean, like even maybe this is a little bit like annoyingly meta or like high level, but like it sounds very similar to the role of being a priest that you're preparing for. Is like often as like a layperson, I'm like, all right, well, Father, like I'm the one who needs to avoid the sin. You're just giving me the advice. Like I'm the one that has the hard job here. And it's like, all right, but there is like this role of the coach of like, of actually giving you that like big level view of things.
Well, right. And that's the whole point of a spiritual director, right? That is the point of the advice part of a confession, is, trying to provide that perspective. Because the coach on the sideline is seeing the backdoor cut that you're not seeing as a player. The priest is able to see, step number 1 is where you went wrong. Step number 10 may be the sin that you committed. But, what went wrong was step number 1. Right. And so, it's totally true of, and that's the whole, spiritual life in general, right? Of course, who has the biggest perspective? Well, ultimately God, of course.
Yeah.
And that is one of my big reflections over the last 3 years has just been seeing my students, seeing, even some of my players make the same mistake over and over. And no matter how many times I tried to re-explain how to do something or like put it into a different format, okay, think about it this way, or let's do it this way. That's what I love about math, especially Algebra 1. There's a lot of different ways to get to A and B. There's so many different ways you can solve a simple equation. But for some people, it just clicks this way. For other people, it clicks that way. And that's how that's how God sees us. He's trying to get us from point A to point B.
Wow.
And God has infinite number of ways to try to get us from A to B, but we like to make this mistake, and then we'll make this mistake, and then we'll make this mistake. And there are some times where I wanted to bash my head against a wall because I'm like, how do you not know what the greatest common factor is? It is so obvious.
Yeah.
It's 2.
Yeah.
That's the greatest.
No,
it's just 2. Don't overthink it. It's just 2.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel like God is with us. It's like, how do you not know where I'm trying to lead you?
Yeah, it's so easy.
It's right there, spelled out.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow. So that's how patient the Lord is.
Yeah.
Because I want to bash my head against a wall.
Yeah.
And just
and
imagine.
this isn't even sin. This is just algebra. This isn't even an eternal stake. This is one quiz.
Your soul is not at stake if you cannot take out a common factor.
Yeah. I do think that's a really, I think this idea of the classroom not just as formation of the student but formation of the educator is a really crucial thing when it comes to being a like successful educator, not just like success, but actually like being an impactful educator is also recognizing your role of like, no, I'm also here to grow and learn, which is particularly obvious for you because you're here as a form of formation.
Right.
Like it is part of your end goal.
Right. My mentality going into most things, and definitely coming into this time of Regency was, I know nothing. I'm coming to a school. I entered the Jesuits out of high school. So I entered when I was 19 years old, and I worked at Starbucks when I was in high school. That was my one job experience. Yeah. So then I come here to the high school, to Jesuit high school, and I'm like, I've never really had a formal job before. So I don't know anything about the workforce.
Wow.
And so I just came in into like, I'm here to learn. And I think that has benefited me so much in my 3 years here taking that position of, even though I'm the teacher, right? But I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn how to teach. I'm here to learn on how to lead kids in retreats. And seeing how much the students have formed me over the last 3 years, they have been the primary formators for me.
Wow.
Like me really jump-starting my devotional life is thanks to the students.
Really?
Because they would be like, oh, Mr. Bell, like, you pray the breviary every day, don't you? Yeah, all 5 hours. Yeah, sure. Oh, wait, that should be something that I need to be implementing.
Yeah.
Like, of course, when I'm a priest or, when I'm ordained a deacon, like, yes, that is going to be something that I need to do. And so over the last 3 years, I've grown in my devotion to the breviary.
Wow.
Thanks just to the students being like, oh, you like assuming that I do that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Yeah, of course. It's like, oh, you pray the morning offering every day, don't you? What is this morning offering that you speak of? 3 Hail Mary devotion. What? Okay. So like all of these things, like I've added to my spiritual life over the last several years. So like not just formation spiritually for me over the last 3 years, but really just taking this position of humility. And when you take that position of humility, you're able to see where I think the Holy Spirit is guiding you. And so through the classroom, listening to other teachers, listening to the students' feedback. So actually my first year, no one really teaches you how to grade. There's a lot of different ways to grade a paper. Even in math, there's a lot of it's very cut and dry, but even in math, there's a lot of ways to, grade a paper. And I was doing these daily quizzes my first year, and I was like, okay, you got a little bit something wrong. Okay, minus 0.25. All right, so that's like no one really taught. That's what I'm going to take off. But a student, you got to watch out for some of the smart ones, or the smart aleck ones. But a student raised his hand and was like, well, Mr. Bell, like I just missed, one little thing and it was minus 0.25 and I got a 90, out of this 7-point quiz, or whatever it was. And I was like, that's fair. He's like, and then when they see that on a teacher, you got to be careful with that because then they smell blood. So then, he goes, well, what if you just take off, 0.05? Like, whoa. Okay.
You mean
whoa. Again. But, we eventually was like, okay, 0.15. Okay. All right, let's look at this, So like the students actually helped me. And then I also, went back to other teachers and got their advice, of course, but it was really the students who pointed that out to me as a teacher. And I'm like, okay, no, you're right. It does need to be a collaborative, back and forth between teacher and student.
Yeah.
So yeah, they helped form me of, okay, how am I going to grade this? How am I going to teach?
But even more than that, it also sounds like they're just forming you in general humility.
Yeah.
That like as a teacher, it can be like, and even in the limited times I've been like a teacher in a setting,
sure,
even I'll kind of get like a little bit like, oh no, I'm the teacher. Like you guys are the students, obviously. But it's like, no, like there's a deep humility necessary in order to teach well and to care well for your students.
Right. And you got to let them, be who they are. You can't stifle that creativity. You can't stifle, who they are. Because if a teacher just keeps shutting a student down, that student's going to stop trying to be open.
Yeah.
Same thing goes for leading retreats. I've been on, 13, 14 different kairoses at this point. And kairos is a great retreat, and students, I can't tell you, how many students have opened up like big things in these small groups. Tremendous blessing, right? And some of those, it's thanks to the student leader and not because of me. because the student leader is able to draw so much out of them and even out of me. And I just have to be humble and say, okay, I'm going to let this kid, lead this group.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to try to take it upon me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, of course, I fill in when he needs help, but seeing them at work and leading each other in the faith, I mean, I don't have to do anything. It's awesome. Wow. And I get to like sit back and learn.
Yeah.
It's something else. I mean, it's incredible. And I feel, I've thought this so many times so I entered the Jesuits out of high school, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
So you might think that, I knew a lot about prayer and the Jesuits and the church and everything. Heck no. These students know so much more about faith and theology and prayer, way more than I did when I was a senior in high school saying, I think I want to check this out. And here I am 9 years later. But it's just incredible.
What classes have you taught so far at Jesuit?
So actually, I'm blessed that I only taught Algebra 1 CP.
Really? All 3 years?
Yep. So the lowest Algebra 1 class, or out in the math class that we teach.
Is that because you had nothing else to offer? Or is that just
They did ask. They're like, so I majored in philosophy and economics. So I was like, what are the courses that you feel comfortable teaching on? Theology. I can do intro to theology and or I can teach math. And they're like, great, we need another algebra teacher. So I said, awesome. So, but it's been great because teaching the same thing for the last 3 years, you really are able to master the craft. So like teachers who have been teaching for 15, 20 years, they know the material so well. And, as long as they're good at, adapting it to each class, because each year you have new students, a different dynamic, different way that you might have to present the material, so like you run into all these things like now I know how to explain what the greatest common factor is or the lowest common multiple or all of these phrases that like, okay, I know what it is, but how do you teach it is something completely different. So just learning how to teach and learning of being like how to prepare for things.
Yeah. And in that, I'll also imagine there's like a big learning curve of how to infuse spirituality into the classroom, that it's not just like secular completely.
Well, exactly. Like teaching, math is the language of God, right? I mean, it's the language of the universe, right? Chemistry, all of sciences, the mathematics, all, God created the universe, right? And one way we understand the universe, a major way that we understand the universe is through math.
Yeah, through numbers.
Right, through numbers. And trying to point that out to the students, it goes over their head, but, just not everybody, but some students get it. And, it's a pathway into reality, math.
Wow.
And so understanding that in a way is also understanding the Lord, who is reality itself. So it's incredible to try to, see how, and it's logical, especially like Algebra 1. It's very didactic. This is what it is. And, our Lord is the Logos, right? He's logic itself, right? So like every pathway into reality is a pathway to the Lord. And that's what I think the liberal education, which our society is trying to get away from. It's all STEM. Listen, I went to a STEM middle school. I'm better at science and mathematics than I am at English. So, but the liberal education gives you so much more of a perspective about reality. That's what I love about Jesuit schools. That's what I love about our Jesuit school. We just have a new arts building, like pathway into the arts and science and mathematics are completely different ways of encountering reality, which means encountering the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, the same way, like in a classroom, the pursuit of truth is the pursuit of the Lord.
Right.
Like, if the classroom teaches falsities, then it is not in pursuit of the Lord. But
Correct.
To understand the earth, to understand creation, is to know Him.
Mm-hmm. Which is amazing, like geology. I had a friend who studied geology in college, and he would go on and on about the different sediment levels and like how you can date things and like the temperature of the earth at this time and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, sure. All right. Could care less.
Yeah.
But he had there's just this, in a way, spiritual connection. Is like, how cool is it that the Lord did this?
Yeah.
How cool is it that, the earth is made this way? It's like, and the more, a geologist knows about the earth, is a way that they are able to have a pathway to God.
Interesting.
Like they are able to relate to the Lord and know the Lord in a way that I do not.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Lord, in all of creation, right, is sustaining us, continually sustaining us, right? The Lord did not just create the earth and, okay, good luck, right? Actively, right now, you and I sitting here, the Lord is sustaining us in being.
Mm-hmm.
And so in every aspect of reality, or in every aspect of our life, of this earth, of our relationships, the Lord is to be found.
Mm-hmm.
Even in, the most desolate place.
And in that way, like, all education becomes evangelization.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, exactly.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Because if education, what is the goal of education? Right? To education. The goal of it is to communicate truths, right? In different realities. It's not just give me the grade, which is what our education system is turning into, and it's hard.
It's such a shame.
It is a shame. And it's hard to communicate that to a 14-year-old boy. I wouldn't listen to it when I'm a 14-year-old boy. Yeah. So it is what we have. But, that's the whole goal of education. That's why we always say you're never done learning. Because as soon as you're done learning, then you're closing yourself off to the truth. Because we can never fully comprehend truth, or what is truth. Mm-hmm. You can never fully comprehend it because it is God. And that's what's so neat about it. That's what's so cool about it. That's why I feel like many teachers, even if they're not, Christian or Catholic or even religious, there's some level that they are always learning, and they find that exciting.
Yeah. And I thought that's just what makes Catholic education so valuable, and the reason that historically it's been such an important part of society, because like it is the natural conclusion of education. Like education all points to Catholic education, because to be educated means to know the Lord.
Right.
So like in that way, like you cannot separate the spiritual life from the intellectual life. Like they are intertwined, and these pursuits of studies and truths like have to be given the respect they're due and the perspective they're due.
Right.
Like if I was taught that like if your friend was taught like rocks are this old and this is why, it'd be kind of boring until it becomes like a beauty of the earth. Like until there's a perspective. Without perspective, it's all just like it's all just numbers and ridiculousness.
Right. Exactly. One of my least favorite questions, but I get it almost every single year, every year. When am I ever going to use this? Why do I need to know this? Because then it becomes utilitarian.
Yeah.
Right. Why do I need to know how to factor? Like, I'm never going to factor in my life. I'm like, okay. You're becoming utilitarian in that sense. Your education is not purely for how am I going to make millions of dollars. Because that is what our students are engulfed with. Like, they're on TikTok, want to make $200 in an hour. They're scrolling through, okay, this is how you can make however much money. They look at their influencers. Oh, look how much money I have. And they just want to either be TikTok famous, they want to make $1 million, they want to, whatever it is. So if it's not going to help them get that goal, to them it's pointless. And that's the sad part, is because, we all know, right? And it's harder for a rich man to pass through an eye of a needle than it is to, enter the kingdom of God. And that's just so sad.
And I think it really points to the reality of like our job, pretty like your job as an educator, but our jobs as evangelists, as Catholics, to be witnesses of how attractive like the spiritual life is in the Lord is. Because frankly, like the TikTok life that they see online, like it's attractive. It's not a mystery why a student likes the idea of going on fun adventures, videoing it, and getting millions of dollars. That sounds sick. So it's not really like, yeah, I like this narrative of like, oh, kids are so lazy, they just want to be influencers. It's like, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Like they're being shown like survivorship bias. They're being shown that everyone who's an
Yeah.
influencer is rich and famous.
That's right.
And do fun things all day. Like they'd be idiots if they didn't want that.
Sure.
We all kind of want that. That's what like retirement fantasizes about, is like I get to do what I want and not worry about money.
Yeah.
But it's the reality of like it's not that TikTok fame has become too attractive. It's that we as a culture suck at making deeper things attractive.
Right.
We're so bad at reminding people of like, no, it is beautiful to be in the spiritual life. It is beautiful to be an educator. It is beautiful to be a doctor. Like these things that are used to be like admirable big goals are now seen as like the boring, monotonous thing.
Right.
And we've lost the actual beauty of like, I have these roles.
Right. Well, I think it's JP2 that was, he said, life in Christ is a beautiful adventure. Right. And that life in Christ is the adventure. I think if you're not living a life in Christ, you're not going on the adventure that you're supposed to be on. So I was 18 years old, senior in high school, and I decided to join the Jesuits. That's a whole long backstory. But since then, before I entered the Jesuits, I, had never been to another country. A year and a half later, I'm in Guyana for 3 months in the Amazon teaching catechism to some of the native tribes. Amazing.
That's sick.
Why am I here? But I'm here, living this life, sleeping in a hammock, and loving life. They were so ready to get anything. Like all I did was went through the Apostles' Creed and the 7 Sacraments. And they were hanging on every word I was saying. Awesome. It was I had to pinch myself. It was amazing. And I was like, how am I in Guyana, South America, in the Amazon rainforest teaching catechism right now? Because I have a life in Christ, right? Why was I able to, study abroad in Spain? Why was I able to do so many different things in the Jesuits? Why am I able to teach at Jesuit high school?
Yeah.
As a first-time teacher.
Yeah.
That'll never happen. And go on these cool, amazing adventure with these students. And see how the Lord is pointing me back towards Him in all of these experiences.
Yeah.
And being able to see a wider point of reality. because I have that spiritual life, that connection to God. And to me, like, that is the true adventure. Going to a cool place and, jumping off of a cliff and, videotaping it, like, okay, cool. I've been club jumping too, bro. Awesome. But are you able to, be there for a student when he admits to you that he has thoughts of suicide? Are you able to be there for a student when, their father gets arrested? Are you able to be there for, any number of situations that a student has come into my office and has confided me in, or confided in me, right? And I just get to be ear for him. One of the things, my first year actually, I got into a rhythm of my classroom, and I got bored with my own lessons. Like, if I'm getting bored, then the students are definitely bored. But a friend of mine pointed out, I was like, Peter, the students look to you for stability. Even at our prep school in Tampa, divorce rates are still, same at our school. A bunch of crap is going on at home as well. Just because, our tuition's $18,000 doesn't mean, the problems of the world are not there. And so they pointed out, one thing that came up in prayer too was when they walk into Mr. Bell's classroom, they know what they're going to get. When they go home, they might not know what they're going to get at home. But when they walk into Mr. Bell's, they know that they're going to have to take a note packet, that we're going to stand for prayer, right? And then we're going to go through the lesson. They're going to do some homework. We can shoot the breeze. For those 50 minutes, they know what's going to happen. And they have a trusted adult, right, that's going to be there for them. Like, that's the adventure that I want to go on. Being there for others. Leading others. Being led by the Lord. Being led by my friends, right? Being led by you and all. Like, living life to the full, right? In the Lord. Because that's what it means to live life to the full. Living life to the full is not, okay, I'm going to go to this random place and, make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like life to me. If you're doing it with, friends that you love, right? And you're able to be there for those whom you love, okay, better. But if you're not doing it in the Lord and for the Lord, then what are you doing with your life?
Yeah. There's nothing eternal to it at that point.
Nothing. You're not storing up treasures for heaven.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm on my deathbed and the coolest thing I did was go to Rome when I was in high school, then I lived a pretty bad life. I think it's really easy in the moment to get caught up in these fantasies of like money and fame and ease of life. But then it's like, let's take that zoom out, like the point of an educator, the point of a coach of like, let's zoom out real quick. There's something a lot bigger going on here than just like, I want the A in this class so I don't have to take algebra again. Right. Like, there's a much deeper reality to your life that right. The educator's entrusted with.
Right. And the other biggest thing is okay, what's next? An education. Okay, you pass algebra. Okay, what's next? Move on to geometry. Okay, what's next? Okay, you get to what's next until, say you're a doctor. Okay, you're at the highest level of what's next in education.
Yeah.
Okay, you always have that what's next. If you're a creator on TikTok, okay, I just had, the most views of any video. What's next?
Yeah.
If you're not able to have a spiritual life that grounds you, that what's next is always going to be there, right? But if you take time in prayer every day, that question of what's next really isn't there because you're abiding in the eternal God. You're with. Now, of course, you grow in the spiritual life. Like, that can Absolutely. Be a what's next of the spiritual Absolutely. Life, right? Because you can always go deeper in the spiritual life, right? But you're there. You're abiding in the eternal. You're in adoration. You are adoring the eternal God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have had this experience. I know I've had this experience. I know students who have come and explained this to me as well, of that adoration went like that. You know, that 2-hour adoration on sophomore retreat went like that.
Yeah.
Because they're abiding in the eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Because they feel this peace. They don't need to go anywhere. I've had this whole thing of, you know, I've been in adoration and I'm like, okay, I don't need to go anywhere. Like this is it. This is it. This is awesome. Like, I could stay here forever. There is no what's next.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And that's what I think our society and our students are always concerned with, what's next, and it stresses them out. They're always so stressed.
Yeah.
And the demands on a high school student are a lot.
Yeah.
And I was in high school almost 9 years ago now, right? And I don't even remember it being that much. But yeah, this whole of what's next, and you know what's going on at home and in society. Like Father Joe Hill, he's our you know him. He's our vocation promoter, and he went to a junior classroom. This is a year ago, and he had them put their heads down and led them through a little examine. And he asked the question, who in here has hope for their future? This is Jesuit high school, you know, great Catholic high school, junior class. Who has hope for the future? Not one raised their hand. And so he finishes the examen and the heads, you know, come up. And he said, it's just interesting. I just want to ask, you know, none of you raised your hand when I asked if you had hope for your future. And they all chimed in and were like, oh yeah, the way the world is going, you know, I have no hope for the future. You know, what's happening in society is it just weighs down on them, and they're like, they just throw their hands up.
Mm-hmm.
How sad is that? That you're 16, 17 years old, and you have no hope for your future. That's where we're at. Because we try to instill, and I try to instill of like, okay, you're right. If you look at the world, there is no hope. You're correct.
Yeah.
So why are we looking at the world?
Yeah, good thing that's not what we're living for.
Right. And that's, if you're looking at the world, of course, there's very little hope. I'm not going to say there's no hope. Mm-hmm. I still think there's some hope in the world for sure. Secular world I'm talking about. But again, it's that adventure in Christ. As soon as you put your stake in the Lord
mm-hmm.
and have hope in the Lord, all of a sudden that great adventure starts. And you start to have that hope for your life. Because you know you're not in control. Because I think if you try to take control or try to manage your life. Talking to a guy who has a vow of obedience, trying to manage his own life, that's not going to happen, which I love. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I love to have trust in my superiors and that the Lord is going to work through where they send me. That has been the truth of my vocation. And so, yeah, it's just sad.
It's such a clear example of like the evil one twisting the good.
That's so true.
Because the Lord gives us this beautiful reality of like, you have a future with limitless possibilities. That's so beautiful. Yeah. What a gift. Yeah, right. The fact that nothing, temporally speaking, is stopping you from being the next pope.
Sure.
Like, that's how limitless the possibilities are for our lives. Mm-hmm. And like that bastard in hell who can't create anything, can't do anything good for himself. He's nothing like, well, I'm just going to twist it. Yeah. I'm just going to take that good thing of like limitless possibilities, and instead of turning it into a hope and an excitement, I'm going to turn it into a stressor.
Right. And the weight of the world.
Exactly. And I'm going to watch the world burn with stress for the future. instead of excitement for the eternal.
Yeah, exactly. And putting those blinders on are what the devil wants to do. Mm-hmm. And I see it all the time with our students. To point out the obvious one of pornography and masturbation. Of course, our teenage males struggle with that, and they have described to me so many times of like, when they're being tempted, it's because these blinders get put on and they isolate themselves, and then they fall into temptation. Mm-hmm. And that's what the devil wants to do in every single sin. Yeah. Forget about the eternal joy and happiness of abiding in the Lord abiding in a community, right? You forget that. Of course, you're going to go to doomsday. You're going to go to there's no hope. You're going to fall into all the pleasures of the world, because apparently that's the only way you can find pleasure. So you're right. Like the role of the educator, especially a Catholic educator, is to excite the student about the eternal. And how cool is that?
Yeah.
But I have struggled with this. Like I struggle with trying to point that out to them. Mm-hmm. Of how cool is it that you have an all-powerful, all-loving, all-good God that knows everything about you and wants you to be with him forever. Mm-hmm. And that's all you got to worry about.
That's it.
And if you truly abide in him, he will take care of everything. Like one thing, so my dad started his own business when I was growing up, and that's when he said that he really came back to the faith because he realized he couldn't do it all on his own. He was, in his mid-30s at this point, and yeah, like he went to prayer when he started his own business. He did not try to do it all on his own, and he realized. He can tell you story after story of where he found the Lord along the way, guiding his business. Mm-hmm. So like there's an example of the secular, right? Starting your own business, making money, and how the Lord's calling you to do that, right? He's calling to provide for his family. Yeah. Will assist in that. Mm-hmm. But if that's what the Lord's plan is.
It takes such a holy indifference to do all of this. Mm-hmm. Like as we were talking about the future and all this, like it feels like that's something that's so under attack nowadays, is the ability to be indifferent, like in a holy manner, obviously. Right. And like how to bring that into the classroom. Because like you don't want students to be indifferent to the lessons and to the stuff, but also like how to instill in them a holy indifference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The indifference that leads to apathy is obviously the bad kind of indifference.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
But the indifference that leads to humility is what will take you on that adventure. Mm-hmm. That indifference to be saying, okay, Lord, which one do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? And that takes humility. Mm-hmm. But the indifference that leads to apathy of just, I could care less. I don't care about my grades. Yeah. I don't care about, whatever it is.
Yeah. Which is, again, that twisting of the evil one.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly what we're trying to overcome in our students. And here's the thing. It sounds like we're sounding the doomsday. Let's focus on some positive right now. I see students every single day go into that chapel. It's a great blessing. We have our chapel in the middle of campus, so they cross the chapel, 20 times a day.
Can't avoid it.
And they just pop in 5-10 minutes during their lunch period or even during passing periods just to say a quick little prayer. Kids who I'll never even think, or even have seen before are in there. So something's happening. The Spirit is always alive and well. We're sounding the doomsday device, but at Jesuit high school and at several, Catholic institutions, like the message is getting through. And that's what's so exciting.
Yeah.
And, we have a great altar servers, students who go to daily mass and,
just had a crazy RCIA class, didn't you?
Yeah. 18 people came into the church.
Yeah.
Yeah. Full communion. Yeah. Last year, 15, year before that, 22. The Lord is at work.
Yeah.
And these are like varsity baseball players. These are some wrestlers. These aren't just, some of the quote unquote campus ministry kids. These are guys across the board, all aspects of student life. And because they're recognizing that there is something eternal to their life. And they don't want to have no hope for their future. So they're doing something about it. Like, that is what's so awesome about being an educator when that happens. There are a lot of days when that doesn't happen. But exciting the kids and seeing their own prayerful reflections on the Lord and the spiritual life, I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
It's beautiful.
I just trying to think of an example for sure, but like the thing is, it happens so often. You're just like, oh man, in one ear out the other sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's super fair. 'Cause, yeah, it is important to say like these doomsday things are almost just to identify the enemy,
right?
But like, I mean, kind of the point of this podcast, the point of Nets in the Water is to remind educators and remind ourselves, like, it is not doom and gloom out there.
Right.
Like, we just had 18 guys at RCIA. Like, there are good, beautiful things happening all around the nation in Catholic schools that we see here, that you see at Jesuit, that, like, yeah, there are these realities of frustration, but, like, man, what a privilege! First off, what a privileged position of the educator.
Amen.
To be at the front lines of that, and in the same way of being at the front lines of the battle, being on the front lines of the fruit,
right?
Like getting to witness that yourself.
Wow. Yeah.
The fact that you get that privileged position of walking with these guys, of talking to them, like that's the role of the educator. That's what you were sent to Tampa to be formed by.
Right. Exactly. And even when us teachers hang out, we find that we're talking about the same 3%, 4% of the student body.
Yeah.
And we tend, even myself included, sometimes tend to, focus in on that. Where we don't
3 or 4 bad percent.
Exactly.
Yeah. Frustrating.
Exactly. But we don't realize, the other 95% that are just great guys. And they're doing amazing things. What they're doing in the community with their service hours, what the different clubs that they're creating, and all the different aspects that they engage in at the school. They're talented.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And what I love, how much money they raise for some clubs or different tour drives that they like initiate, like they're incredible.
Yeah.
I would never have thought about that doing that when I was 16. Like, whoa, this is awesome. And somehow I'm teaching you to do something like that. Like, I don't get that, how you got that from me, but I'm glad. Students was like, oh, Mr. Bill, I learned such and such from you. I'm like, awesome. I don't ever remember mentioning that, but cool. I'm so happy that brought you closer to the Lord. And yeah, the Lord can just work in so many different ways. The evil one can just work in that one. Cut you off from the community, put those blinders on, and twist the good.
He's not creative.
Yeah, exactly. Sin is not new. It's not creative.
It's been the same thing.
Exactly. And so, but that's what's so cool is that, like, you can say one thing and a student will hear something completely different, and they'll get something out of it. That's positive.
Yeah.
Like, great.
Great. Got it.
Job was done.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, and the privilege of being on these retreats, you know, so I was, you know, I teach math, yes, but then, you know, I would say, you know, majority is I feel like I'm in campus ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So I help with all the liturgies, definitely help with all of the retreats, and everything in between. And we got our freshman pilgrimage, which we'll be on next week.
Super excited. I think I've been on almost as many Kairoses as you have.
Probably.
I think I've been on like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I want to say.
And like just being on those retreats, giving talks at those retreats, putting on the adoration, you know, how cool is it that my job is about providing a space for God to encounter others? That's all I get to do. Like, my job is literally to provide a space for others to encounter the Lord. So me setting up for adoration, me setting up for mass, me going into the classroom and clerics, like me walking down the street. You know, people just see me and they think of the faith and they think of God. So like, that's one thing I love about my vocation. Like, this is an example of a student, you know, how they bring your vocation out of you. At the RCIA reception, you know, a couple weeks ago, I'm walking back with a student who he himself went through RCIA, and we're just rejoicing, like, how awesome it is that we get 18 guys into the church. And he goes, yeah, I'm thinking about it, Mr. Bell. Like, this is the rest of your life. I never thought about it that way, but I'm like, dang, yeah, you're right. This is the rest of my life. Yeah. I get to bring people into the church and communion with the Catholic faith and give them the sacraments.
Yeah.
For the rest of my life. That's awesome.
Even in a greater sense. Like, now you get to do it even at a higher level in the next, 6 years till you're ordained?
3.
3?
Yeah.
I just peeked the mic. You're ordained in 3 years?
Yeah, God willing.
That's so sick.
So yeah, but like, it's that, like, that's my job. My job is to provide a space for the Lord to encounter his people.
We're so lucky.
Like, that's the job of a priest.
Yeah.
And as soon as the priest himself, right? As soon as Peter Bell, you know, gets in the way of the Lord encountering, that's when I gotta take a step back. But like, and in a way, that's the goal, you know, if we want to draw it back to education, of like, you're, as a teacher, you're trying to get the information in the student, like, you're providing that space for the student to encounter that information, right? And as soon as the teacher starts to get in the way of that information, right, that's when things go downhill. But if you allow the Spirit to be able to guide all of that, okay, that is when education actually happens and formation happens. You know, there's a common saying, at least I've heard it. I don't know if it's all that common, but you know, students will forget 90% of what you said or taught, but they'll always remember the way you made them feel. And so, of course, I want them to remember what I taught them. But if they don't remember that, I hope they remember that I cared for them, right? That I, preached the gospel to them somehow, some way, and that, I love them, right? Because I love all of my students. Like, if I communicated that, and then, like, I'm always here, like, I'm always here if you need to talk. I'm always here for whatever it is that you need. No, questions asked. Like, yes. If a student knows that, or at least feels that way, that he knows that he can come to me, then I've done my job. I've done my job. So, yeah, it's crazy. I, in the thought of saying mass one day just gets me emotional. Like, that is the ultimate space to where, I get to provide the space for people to encounter the Lord in his sacrifice on the cross.
Wow.
Only a priest can do that.
Yeah.
We're all called to provide. We're all called to have spaces where others can encounter the Lord, right? But that, for me, at least in my vocation, that's a specific call. And I'm humbled, right? I'm so not worthy. Part of the reason why I feel like I relate so much to these high school students, because, like, yeah, those sins that you are in the midst of, some of them I'm still in the midst of too. Yeah. Others, yes, I've gotten some control over it, and I can help you. That's why, no judgment, no questions asked. Like, listen, I get it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I love it.
Love it. Beautiful. I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up. Give us a little bongo solo to close out on.
I have to do the bongo solo?
Yeah, it's your job.
But you're the percussionist of the two of us.
We could do rock, paper, scissors for a bongo solo.
2 out of 3 on shoot, or just 1?
2 out of 3.
On shoot.
Yeah.
Okay. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Crap.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Dang it, he figured it out.
The old triple rock.
I only throw rock.
All right, well, now you have to
paper,
throw
scissors.
some bongo.
I have no musical talent whatsoever.
Let's get the mic on it.
Am I doing it on the table?
I mean, you can do whatever you want. You're the guest.
Well, I've never done bongos, so I
But
doesn't do it.
you're the guest, so you get to do that. The audio listeners are going to be so confused right now.
How do I even play the bongos?
All right, and that is the podcast. Peter, thank you so much for coming on. Reminder to the audience, he is not a priest. That's why I never called him father. Thank you so much for your time. This was awesome.
Loved it, John.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in to Nets in the Water. Thanks for coming on. We'll be back every other week, alternating. And, yeah, we are